The sound of the mail slot clinking against the wooden door startled Alicia Brown from her thoughts. She wiped her hands on her simple cotton dress and walked over. Among bills and neighborhood flyers, one envelope stood out, thick ivory paper, gold foil letters shimmering across the front. Her name was written in elegant cursive, Ms. Alicia Brown. Her hands hesitated. She never received mail like this. Slowly, she opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation from someone she hadn't heard from in nearly 15 years, Vanessa King. The note was handwritten, dripping with warmth. Dearest Alicia, it would mean the world to me if you came to witness my big day. Please, you simply must attend. Alicia blinked. Vanessa King, the same woman who used to mock her relentlessly in school for being the poor girl. The same one who laughed at her thrift store shoes and plain lunches. Why now? Why invite her? She read the words again, her chest tightening. Maybe she's changed, Alicia whispered to herself. She was a woman of grace, of forgiveness. Life had taught her not to hold grudges. She pressed the envelope to her heart, deciding to attend, even though something deep inside warned her it wasn't safe. Far away in a penthouse glittering above New York City, Vanessa smirked as she reviewed the guest list with her friends. Her eyes froze on Alicia's name, and a cruel grin spread across her lips. Do you remember Alicia Brown? She asked, swirling champagne in her crystal glass. Ashley, her oldest friend, laughed bitterly. The girl who wore those hand-me-downs? I thought she disappeared into some tiny apartment somewhere. She'll be here, Vanessa said, her voice cold and sharp, and she'll be the entertainment of the evening. Imagine her standing in the middle of all those millionaires and CEOs like a stain on silk. Her friends burst into laughter, their voices echoing through the penthouse. None of them had the faintest idea that Alicia was not the same girl they remembered. The world they lived in, the glittering surface, hid truths that would shatter them soon enough. Weeks later, the sun shone like molten gold across Miami's oceanfront as Alicia stepped out of a cab in front of the Azure Hotel, one of the most expensive venues in the country. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her thick natural hair pulled back neatly, her shoes plain but polished. She stood for a moment gazing at the towering building of glass and marble, knowing she didn't blend in with the arriving guests in their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Inside, the grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers and diamond necklaces. Music floated through the air. Famous faces mingled, whispering greetings and sipping champagne. When Alicia entered, conversations faltered. Eyes turned. Whispers began. Who invited her? A woman hissed. Did she get lost? That's linen, at a wedding like this? A man scoffed, adjusting his Rolex. Heat rose in Alicia's chest, but she kept her head high, clutching her small purse. At the reception desk, a blonde attendant looked her over and gave a tight smile. Excuse me, ma'am, staff entrance is around the side. If you're here to serve, you'll need to change. For a moment, the words stung like glass. Alicia took a breath, then calmly pulled the invitation from her purse. No, I am a guest, she said, her voice steady. The attendant's eyes widened at the gold-embossed card. She stammered, Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please, right this way. But the damage was done. Heads turned, whispers spread, and the humiliation Vanessa had planned was beginning to work. At that very moment, Vanessa appeared at the top of the staircase, shimmering in a diamond-studded gown, every inch the queen of her stage. Her eyes locked onto Alicia, and her lips curved into a razor-thin smile. She descended slowly, savoring the moment, then leaned close to whisper, Oh, Alicia, you haven't changed at all, so simple, so forgettable. Alicia smiled faintly, though her heart ached. I came to wish you joy, Vanessa, nothing more. Vanessa pulled away, her friends giggling behind her, already preparing for the next act in her cruel performance. But what none of them knew was that this wedding, this carefully staged humiliation, was about to backfire in ways they could never imagine. And Alicia, the woman they mocked as simple, carried a truth that would soon bring the entire hall to silence. The music swelled as Alicia stepped further into the ballroom, the lights from the crystal chandeliers spilling across her modest dress. Every step she took seemed to echo louder than the violin strings. The whispers followed like shadows. She doesn't belong here. maybe she's charity work. Vanessa always loved her little jokes. Alicia's jaw tightened. She was used to being judged by her appearance, but here, under the gaze of hundreds of wealthy guests, the sting cut deeper. Still, she moved with grace. She carried herself like a woman who knew her worth, even if no one else in the room could see it yet. At the far side of the hall, Vanessa leaned toward her friends, her smile sharp as glass. "Watch closely," she whispered. "Tonight, she will be the story everyone tells, not because of who she is, but because of how small she looks in this room." Ashley chuckled, her eyes glinting. "And after tonight, she'll never dare to show her face in circles like this again." The bride's plan unfolded piece by piece. First, the seating arrangement. While other guests were guided to tables draped with silk, Alicia was pointed toward the farthest corner of the hall, where a single chair sat by itself. A waiter placed a glass of water before her while the other tables gleamed with champagne flutes and golden plates. Some guests watched with pity. Others smirked openly. One man even leaned across to his wife and said, "It's just loud enough. I hope she doesn't think this is a buffet. That dress screams middle class at best." Alicia felt her throat tighten, but she sat calmly, folding her hands in her lap. She wasn't here for food or drink. She was here to show respect, even if respect was not being shown to her. Then came the cruelest moment yet. Vanessa, glowing in her jeweled gown, called for attention. The music softened, the chatter faded, and all eyes turned toward her. With her sweetest smile, she said into the microphone, "Before dinner is served, I'd like to thank everyone who has made this day so magical. My family, my friends, and of course, our special guest tonight." Her eyes swept the room before landing on Alicia. "Everyone, please welcome Alicia Brown, a dear, old acquaintance." The spotlight tilted. A beam of light fell on Alicia, isolating her in front of hundreds of wealthy eyes. Gasps, giggles, and murmurs rippled across the hall. Vanessa's friends clapped with exaggerated enthusiasm, their mocking smiles impossible to miss. Alicia stood slowly, her face calm though her chest burned. She gave a polite nod to the crowd and said softly, "Congratulations, Vanessa. I wish you joy." It was simple, it was dignified. But Vanessa's plan wasn't finished. She smirked and added, "You see, everyone, Alicia and I go way back, and let me tell you, she has always been so wonderfully simple. Some people chase riches, others chase fashion. But Alicia, she never changed. Isn't that admirable?" The crowd laughed lightly, unsure whether to take it as a compliment or a joke. Vanessa leaned closer to the microphone, her eyes never leaving Alicia's. "Some of us sparkle, and some of us keep things plain." The laughter grew sharper this time, cutting deeper. Alicia sat back down quietly, her heart steady but heavy. She could have stood up and silenced them all with one sentence. She could have revealed the truth right then, that her investments, her companies, her quiet empire made her wealthier than nearly everyone in that ballroom combined. But she didn't. Not yet. Because Alicia believed something Vanessa had long forgotten. True wealth is revealed not by words, but by time. And time was moving quickly toward the moment when the game would turn. The wedding dinner began with golden plates carried by waiters in crisp white uniforms. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter rolled across the marble walls, and the fragrance of roses filled the air. Yet at the corner table, Alicia sat with nothing more than her untouched glass of water. The waiter swept past her without a glance. It wasn't an accident. Vanessa's orders had been clear. Make sure the special guest sat apart. Make sure she felt out of place. From across the room, Vanessa whispered to Ashley, "Look at her. She doesn't even protest. She'll sit there all night pretending she's comfortable. It's pathetic." Ashley smirked. "The cameras love it. She's a shadow in a room of diamonds." Indeed, phones were out. Guests snapped photos discreetly, posting them with captions meant to sting. "Who invited the maid?" or "Every party needs a charity case." By dessert, whispers had grown into cruel jokes. One bold guest approached Alicia's table. He was tall, slick-haired, and too proud of his tailored tuxedo. He leaned down and said loud enough for others to hear, "Miss, could you fetch me another drink? Red wine, please." A ripple of laughter spread as nearby guests watched. The man clearly thought she was staff. Alicia looked up, her eyes calm and steady. "I don't work here," she replied softly, "but I do hope you enjoy your evening." The man blinked, embarrassed for a moment, but Vanessa's friends quickly laughed to cover him. "See? She even talks like staff. Vanessa, you've outdone yourself." Still, Alicia remained serene. She didn't lash out, didn't defend herself, didn't even reveal who she really was. She had learned long ago that storms passed faster when you stood still, in dignity. But dignity did not silence cruelty. As the night deepened, Vanessa announced the beginning of the gift presentation. Guests lined up to present their lavish offerings: golden watches, diamond bracelets, checks with too many zeros. The groom smiled stiffly, trying to thank everyone, while Vanessa basked in the glitter of excess. When it came time for Alicia, Vanessa couldn't resist. She called her name through the microphone again, her voice sweet as poison. "And now, our special guest. I wonder what she brought." All eyes turned. 100 wealthy faces waited for the humiliation of a woman who looked too plain to belong. Alicia stood slowly, clutching only a small velvet pouch in her hand. She walked toward the couple with grace, her steps echoing in the silence. When she reached them, she offered the pouch gently and said, "For your happiness." Vanessa took it with a mocking smirk, already imagining some trinket from a discount store. She opened it carelessly and froze. Inside lay a set of antique diamond earrings, their brilliance catching every light in the room. Gasps echoed. Even the groom's jaw dropped. "These are from the Harrison collection," whispered one jeweler guest. "Worth millions." Vanessa's smile faltered. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the jewels, but she quickly forced a laugh, raising her voice. "Oh, how surprising! What an unusual gift for someone like you to carry." Her words tried to twist the moment back into ridicule, but the guests were no longer laughing. Whispers spread in a new tone, curious, cautious, almost respectful. Alicia bowed her head politely. "May they bring you joy," she said before returning to her lonely chair. Vanessa sat stiffly, her chest tightening. The plan was working, but not in the way she wanted. For the first time that evening, doubt crept into her eyes. The murmurs in the ballroom had changed tone. Where earlier there was mocking laughter, now there was confusion, uneasy curiosity. Guests leaned closer to whisper, not about Alicia's dress or her simplicity, but about those earrings that shimmered with undeniable history and wealth. Vanessa felt it immediately. The attention was slipping from her control, and she despised it. Her plan had been to make Alicia look like a mistake in silken glass, but now, even in her plain blue dress, Alicia carried a gravity that unsettled the crowd. Vanessa clenched her jaw, forcing her smile back into place. "She got lucky," she muttered to Ashley and Jessica. "Probably borrowed it from a pawn shop. Watch, I'll end this." Moments later, as the music swelled again and the guests returned to their conversations, Vanessa strutted toward Alicia's lonely corner. She bent low, her jeweled veil brushing across her shoulder, and hissed just for her, "Enjoy your little moment, won't you? But remember, you don't belong here. You'll never belong here." Alicia met her gaze with calm eyes. "Vanessa," she said quietly, "belonging isn't defined by chandeliers or gowns. It's defined by how you treat others." For a flicker of a second, Vanessa's smirk faltered, but pride was stronger than reason. She turned away, straightening her gown dramatically, and called across the hall for everyone to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to play a little game with our guest of honor." A hush fell. Heads turned. Even the band slowed their tune. Vanessa smiled sweetly, masking her venom. "You see, Alicia and I grew up together, and tonight I thought it would be fun for everyone to hear a story about how some people never change." Her friends giggled, already sensing cruelty. Guests leaned in with curiosity. Vanessa painted a picture of their school days, how Alicia used to wear the same faded shoes every year, how she carried her lunch in paper bags, how she lived in a house with peeling paint while others lived in estates. Every detail was meant to reduce her to the poor girl she once was. Laughter returned, uneasy but present. Some guests shook their heads with pity. Others laughed openly. Alicia sat through it all, her hands folded, her face composed like stone. She didn't interrupt, didn't defend herself. Her silence was stronger than words. But when Vanessa finished with her grand flourish, and look at her now, still so simple, so plain, the laughter broke into awkward echoes. Because the room had shifted again, people were watching not with amusement, but with discomfort. They could feel the cruelty in Vanessa's voice. One older gentleman, a CEO with silver hair, cleared his throat loudly. "That's enough, Vanessa. Mockery doesn't look good on a bride." Gasps spread. Vanessa's cheeks flushed red beneath her makeup. She forced a laugh, waving her hand. "Oh, it's just a joke, of course. Harmless fun." But the damage was there. A seed of doubt had been planted in the crowd. Maybe the so-called simple woman deserved more respect than she was being shown. Alicia finally stood, her presence quiet but commanding. She looked directly at Vanessa and said in a voice clear enough for all to hear, "Do not mistake kindness for weakness. I came here to celebrate your joy, not to compete with it. But every heart in this room knows the truth. You do not shine brighter by dimming another." The silence that followed was heavier than crystal chandeliers. Some guests nodded subtly. Others clapped once or twice before the sound spread like ripples across the hall. Vanessa's smile stiffened, her hands trembling around her bouquet. For the first time that night, she wasn't sure if the room was hers anymore. And across the ballroom, Alicia sat again in her humiliate corner, still holding back the storm of truth that could break the night wide open. The ballroom air had grown heavy, no longer filled with easy laughter but with whispers and shifting glances. Vanessa could feel it, her control, her image, the flawless picture she had painted of herself. It was slipping. Alicia's calm dignity had pierced through layers of diamond and silk, leaving Vanessa with only one option: to strike harder. She raised her glass, her voice ringing out over the chatter. "Let's toast," she declared, "a toast to friendship, and to memories that remind us where we truly come from." The guests lifted their glasses hesitantly. Vanessa smirked, eyes locked on Alicia. "Because no matter how far some of us try to run, we can't escape what we really are." The words dropped like stones. A few people chuckled politely, but many shifted uncomfortably. It was cruel, transparent cruelty, and even in a room of wealth, cruelty was distasteful. Alicia didn't flinch. She sat tall, her eyes shining, her hands still folded. She had been mocked before, but never had she been mocked in front of so many, and never had she been so close to turning it all around. From the groom's side of the family, an elderly woman leaned forward, whispering to her neighbor, "Do you know who she is? That's Alicia Brown. I think I read about her once." Another man overheard, "Impossible. Look at her." "No," the woman insisted, her eyes narrowing. "I remember now. Brown Enterprises, real estate, philanthropy. She funds hospitals, schools." The whispers traveled, weaving through the hall like fire. Guests turned their heads, trying to catch a better look at the woman sitting quietly in the corner. The name carried weight. For some, it sparked recognition. For others, confusion. But slowly, curiosity began to outweigh Vanessa's carefully built narrative. Noticing the shift, Vanessa panicked. She couldn't allow her carefully crafted empire of attention to collapse on her wedding night. She clinked her glass for silence and laughed, forcing brightness into her tone. "Oh, please, everyone," she said. "Let's not get carried away. Our dear Alicia is sweet, but trust me, she's no one important. She's just simple." But her words fell flat. The spell was breaking. One guest, a business magnate from Chicago, frowned openly. "Simple? Those earrings she gave you belong in a museum. Only someone of extraordinary means would casually give them away." Vanessa froze, her cheeks paling beneath her makeup. Her friends shifted nervously, no longer laughing. Alicia finally stood, her presence filling the room without effort. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I was content to come here quietly," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd, to honor a woman I once knew, despite the way she once treated me. I asked for nothing, expected nothing but respect. Yet tonight, I have been mocked, dismissed, and paraded as a spectacle. Her voice was calm, yet it carried like thunder. The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward her, waiting. I was told once that wealth makes a person powerful, but I learned that power is not in money. It is in how you treat others. Still, she paused, letting her words linger in the air. Since my presence has been doubted so loudly, perhaps it is time I remind you who I am. Gasps rippled. Vanessa's hands trembled around her bouquet. What are you doing? She hissed. Alicia looked straight at her. I am Alicia Brown, owner of Brown Enterprises, a woman whose work has built homes for thousands, whose name funds hospitals you pass every day, whose companies sign paychecks many in this room have cashed. The ballroom erupted in stunned whispers. Eyes widened, jaws dropped. People who had sneered only moments earlier now stared with dawning realization. Vanessa's heart pounded in her ears. The ground beneath her seemed to crumble as the truth spread. Her cruel stage had turned against her, and Alicia wasn't finished. The ballroom had fallen into stunned silence. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. The chandeliers above sparkled like frozen stars, catching the reflection of every widened eye. Alicia stood in the center of it all, calm and unwavering, her truth laid bare. I am not here to boast, she said, her voice steady, cutting through the hush. But I will not allow cruelty to rewrite my story. I am Alicia Brown. I own enterprises across this nation. I have built schools, hospitals, and homes for those who once had none. I came here tonight as a guest, not to be paraded as a joke. Her words carried the weight of dignity, and it struck the guests deeper than Vanessa's diamonds ever could. Murmurs of recognition rippled faster now. She's the one who donated the children's wing. Brown Enterprises? They own half the skyline in Atlanta. I read about her in Forbes. Across the room, faces changed. The same people who had laughed at her dress now looked at her with awe and shame. Some lowered their eyes, others exchanged guilty glances. The cruel man who had mistaken her for a server bowed his head, his arrogance dissolved. Vanessa's chest heaved as she struggled to keep her smile, but the cracks in her mask spread with every word Alicia spoke, until finally, one guest voiced what everyone was thinking. Vanessa, said the silver-haired CEO, rising to his feet, you invited one of the wealthiest women in this country, mocked her, and tried to humiliate her in front of us all. What does that say about you? Gasps swept the room. Vanessa's face burned red, her carefully crafted reputation unraveling thread by thread. She stammered, I was only joking, of course. We're old friends, aren't we, Alicia? Alicia's gaze was steady, her expression unreadable. Old friends don't build traps, she said softly. The groom, who had watched in mounting discomfort, finally stepped forward. His face was pale, his voice heavy. Vanessa, what have you done? The weight of his words dropped like a stone into the silence. Guests began to murmur more openly now, not about Alicia but about Vanessa. The ridicule had turned, sharp and merciless, cutting straight at the bride who had orchestrated this cruelty. Alicia, however, did not gloat. She lifted her chin and addressed the room one final time. Let this be a reminder. Respect is not something you can buy with diamonds or gowns. It is earned in how you treat those you think are beneath you, because someday you may find they stand far above. The applause began softly from the elderly woman who had recognized her name. Then it spread, louder, fuller, until the ballroom thundered with clapping hands. The same hall that had once been filled with whispers and sneers now rose to honor the woman they had mocked. Vanessa stood frozen, her crown of jewels heavier than iron. The spotlight that once made her shine now felt like a furnace burning her pride to ashes. Alicia bowed gracefully, her presence luminous without needing diamonds or gowns. She turned toward the exit, her steps calm and unhurried. And as she walked out of the glittering hall, the applause followed her. Not for wealth, not for power, but for dignity. That night, The story of Vanessa's wedding spread far beyond the Azure Hotel. But it wasn't Vanessa's jewels or gown that people remembered. It was the image of a simple black woman, standing tall in plain blue linen, humbling a room full of millionaires with nothing but truth and grace. And the moral was clear, carried on every whisper, every headline, every retelling. Respect everyone, because you never know whose strength, whose kindness, or whose quiet power you are underestimating.